双语音标领航，注音阅读启蒙，叶兴阳有声读物。
History of Friedrich II of Prussia, v19. By Thomas Carlyle. Book 19. Friedrich liked to be overwhelmed in. The 7 Years' War. 1759-1760. Chapter 1. Preliminaries to a fourth campaign. The posting of the 5 armies this winter, 5 of them in Germany. Not counting the Russians, who have vanished to Cimmeria over the horizon, for their months of rest is something wonderful, and strikes the picturesque imagination. Such a chain of posts, for length, if for nothing else. From the center of Bohemia eastward, Don's Austrians are spread all round the western Silesian border and the southeastern Saxon, waited on by Prussians, in more or less proximity. Next are the Reichsfolk, scattered over Thuringen and the Franconian countries, fronting partly into Hessen and Duke Ferdinand's outskirts. The main body of Duke Ferdinand is far to westward, in Munster country, vigilant upon Contades, with the Rhine between Contades and Soubise. Adjoining on the Reichsfolk are these 2 French armies, Soubise, some 25,000, in Frankfurt, EMS country, between the Main and the Lahn, with its back to the Rhine, then Contades, onward to Maes River and the Dutch borders, with his face to the Rhine, and Duke Ferdinand observant of him on the other side. That is the cordon of posts or winter quarters this year, from the giant mountains and the metal mountains, to the ocean, to the mouth of Rhine, may we not say, and back again to the Swiss Alps or springs of Rhine, that upper Rhine country being all either French or Austrian, and a basis for Soubise? Archenholz, I. 306. Not to speak of ocean itself, and its winged war fleets, lonesomely hovering and patrolling, or of the Americas and Indies beyond. This is such a chain of mutually vigilant winter quarters, says Archenholz, as was never drawn in Germany, or in Europe, before. Chain of about 300,000 fighting men, poured out in that lengthy manner, taking their winter siesta there, asleep with one eye open, till reinforced for new business of death and destruction against spring. Pathetic surely, as well as picturesque. 3 campaigns there have already been, sighs the peaceable observer. 3 campaigns, surely furious enough, 11 battles in them. Stenzel, v. 185. This, I suppose, would be his enumeration. Lobositz, 1756. Pak, Hasenbeck, Gross-Jagersdorf, Rossbach, Breslau, Luthen, 1757. Krefeld, Zorndorf, Hochkirch, 1758. 11 hitherto in all. A Prague, a Luthen, Rossbach. Must there still be others, then, to the misery of poor mankind? Thus sigh many peaceful persons, not considering what are, and have been, the rages, the iniquities, the loud and silent deliriums, the mad blindnesses and sins of mankind, and what amount of calcining these may reasonably take. Not calcinable in 3 campaigns at all, it would appear, for more campaigns are needed. Then there will be innocuous ashes in quantity, and a result unexpected, and worth marking in world history. It is notably one of Friedrich's fond hopes, of which he keeps up several, as bright cloud hangings in the haggard inner world he now has, that peace is just at hand. One right struggle more, and peace must come. And on the part of Britannic George and him, repeated attempts were made. One in the end of this year 1759, but one in all of them proved futile, and, unless for accidental reasons, need not be mentioned here. Many men, in all nations, long for peace, but there are 3 women at the top of the world who do not. Their wrath, various in quality, is great in quantity, and disasters do the reverse of appeasing it. The French people, as is natural, are weary of a war which yields them mere losses and disgraces. war carried on for Austrian whims, which likewise seemed to be impracticable, think they, and their Bernus himself, Minister of Foreign Affairs, who began this sad French-Austrian adventure, has already been remonstrating with Kaunitz, and grumbling anxiously, could not the Swedes, or somebody, be got to mediate? Such a war is too ruinous. Hearing which, the Pompadour is shocked at the favorite creature of her hands, hastens to dismiss him, be cardinal then, you ingrate of a Bernus, disappear under that red hat, and appoints, in his stead, one Choiseul, known hitherto as Stainville, Comte de Stainville, French excellency at Vienna, but now made Duke on this promotion, Duc de Choiseul, Minister of Foreign Affairs, November 11th,
1758, Barbier.
294, who is a Lorrainer, or semi-Austrian, by very birth, and probably much fitter for the place. A swift, impetuous kind of man, this Choiseul, who is still rather young than otherwise. Plenty of proud spirit in him, of shifts, talent of the reckless sort, who proved very notable in France for the next 20 years. French trade being ruined withal, money is running dreadfully low, but they appoint a new Controller General, A.M. de Silhouette, who is thought to have an extraordinary creative genius in finance. Had he but a Fortunatus purse, how lucky were it! With Fortunatus Silhouette as purse-holder, with a fiery young Choiseul on this hand, and a fiery old Belial on that. Pompadour meditates great things this year. Invasions of England, stronger German armies, better German plans, and slashings home upon Hanover itself, or the vital point, and flatters herself, and her poor Louis, that there is on the anvil, for 1759, such a French campaign as will perhaps astonish Pitt and another insolent king. Very fixed, fell and feminine is the Pompadour's humor in this matter. Nor is the Czarina's less so, but more, if possible, unappeasable except by death. Imperial Maria Theresa has masculine reasons withal, great hopes, too, of late, of the war's ending till flat impossibility stop it. There is no likelihood. To pit this campaign 1759, in spite of bad omens at the outset, proved altogether splendid. But greatly the reverse on Friedrich's side, to whom it was the most disastrous and unfortunate he had yet made, or did ever make. Pitt at his zenith in public reputation, Friedrich never so low before. Nothing seemingly but extinction near ahead, when this year ended. The truth is, apart from his specific pieces of ill luck, there had now begun for Friedrich a new rule of procedure, which much altered his appearance in the world. Thrice over had he tried by the aggressive or invasive method, thrice over made a plunge at the enemy's heart, hoping so to disarm or lame him. But that, with resources spent to such a degree, is what he cannot do a fourth time. He is too weak henceforth to think of that. Prussia has always its king, and his unrivaled talent, but that is pretty much the only fixed item. Prussia versus France.
Austria.
Russia. Sweden and the German Reich. What is it as a field of supplies for war? Except its king. These are failing, year by year, and at a rate fatally swift in comparison. Friedrich cannot now do Luthens, Rossbachs, far-shining feats of victory, which astonish all the world. His fine Prussian veterans have mostly perished, and have been replaced by new levies and recruits, who are inferior both in discipline and native quality, though they have still, people say, a noteworthy taste of the old Prussian sword in them, and do, in fact, fight well to the last. But it is observable, says Retzo somewhere, and indeed it follows from the nature of the case, that while the Prussian army presents always its best kind of soldiers at the beginning of a war,
Austria,
such are its resources in population, always improves in that particular, and its best troops appear in the last campaigns. In a word, Friedrich stands on the defensive henceforth, disputing his ground inch by inch, and is reduced, more and more, to battle obscurely with a hydrocoil of enemies and impediments, and to do heroisms which make no noise in the gazettes, and, alas, which cannot figure in history either. What is more a sorrow to me here? Friedrich, say all judges of soldiership and human character who have studied Friedrich sufficiently, is greater than ever. In these 4 years now coming, Barenhorst, in italic Kriegsgunst, and italic Retzo, and C. And this, I have found more and more to be a true thing, verifiable and demonstrable in time and place, though, unluckily for us, hardly in this time or this place at all, a thing which cannot, by any method, be made manifest to the general reader, who delights in shining summary feats, and is impatient of tedious preliminaries and investigations, especially of maps, which are the indispensablest requisite of all, a thing, in short, that belongs peculiarly to soldier students, who can undergo the dull preliminaries, most dull but most inexorably needed, and can follow out, with watchful intelligence, and with a patience not to be wearied, the multifarious topographies, details of movements and maneuverings, year after year, on such a theater of war. What is to be done with it here, if we could, by significant strokes, indicate, under features true so far as they went, the great wide fire flood that was raging round the world, if we could, carefully omitting very many things, omit of the things intelligible and decipherable that concern Friedrich himself, nothing that had meaning, if indeed, but it is idle preluding.
Forward again.
Brave reader, under such conditions as there are, Friedrich's winter in Breslau was of secluded, silent, somber character, this time, nothing of stir in it but from work only, in marked contrast with the last, and its kindly visitors and gaieties, a Friedrich given up to his manifold businesses, to his silent sorrows. I have passed my winter like a Carthusian monk, he writes to Dargins. I dine alone. I spend my life in reading and writing, and I do not sup. When one is sad, it becomes at last too burdensome to hide one's grief continually, and it is better to give way to it by oneself, than to carry one's gloom into society. Nothing solaces me but the vigorous application required in steady and continuous labor. This distraction does force one to put away painful ideas, while it lasts. But, alas, no sooner is the work done, than these fatal companions present themselves again, as if livelier than ever. Maupertuis was right. The sum of evil does certainly surpass that of good. But to me it is all one. I have almost nothing more to lose. And my few remaining days, what matters it much of what complexion they be? Breslau, March 1st, 1759. To Dargins, italic, Œuvre de Friedrich. End italic, 1956. The loss of his Wilhelmina, had there been no other grief, has darkened all his life to Friedrich. Readers are not prepared for the details of grief we could give, and the settled gloom of mind they indicate. A loss irreparable and immeasurable. The light of life, the one loved heart that loved him,
Gone.
His passionate appeals to Voltaire to celebrate for him in verse his lost treasure, and at least make her virtues immortal, are perhaps known to readers. Ode sur la mort des A.S. Madame la Princesse de Berriath, in italic, Œuvre de Voltaire. End italic, 18.79-86. See Friedrich's letter to him, November 6, 1758. With Voltaire's verses in answer next month. Friedrich's new letter, Breslau, 23 January 1759. Demanding something more, followed by the Ode just cited, IB 72. 402. 78.82, 92. Or, italic, Œuvre de Friedrich. End italic, 23.20-24. And C. Alas, This is a very feeble kind of immortality, and Friedrich too well feels it such. All winter he dwells internally on the sad matter, though soon falling silent on it to others. The war is ever more dark and dismal to him, a wearing, harassing, nearly disgusting task, on which, however, depends life or death. This year, he expects to have 300,000 enemies upon him, and is, with his utmost effort, getting up 150,000 to set against them. Of business, in its many kinds, there can be no lack. In the intervals he also wrote considerably. One of his pieces is a sermon on the Last Judgment, handed to Reader Descartes one evening, to Descartes' surprise, and to ours. The voiceless in a dark Friedrich trying to give itself some voice in this way. Italic Obres de Friedrich. End italic 15. 1-10, see Prussia's preface there. For me, italic souvenirs. End italic I 37, and C. Another piece, altogether practical, and done with excellent insight. Brevity, modesty, is on tactics.
Réflexion sur la tactique.
In Batalic, Œuvre de Friedrich. End italic 28. 153-166. Properly it might be called serious, very private thoughts, thrown on paper, and communicated only to 2 or 3, on the new kind of tactics necessary with those Austrians and their allies, who are in such overwhelming strength, to whose continual sluggishness, and strange one of concert, to whose incoherency of movements, languor of execution, and other enormous faults, we have owed, with some excuse for our own faults, our escaping of destruction hitherto, but had better not trust that way any longer. Fouquet is one of the highly select, to whom he communicates this piece, adding along with it, in Fouquet's case, an affectionate little note, and, in spite of poverty, some New Year's gift. As usual, the widow's mite £300, we find. Receive it with the same heart with which it was set apart for you. A small help, which you may well have need of, in these calamitous times. Breslau, 23d December, 1758. With Fouquet's answer, 2d January, 1759. In Batalic, Œuvre de Friedrich. End italic XX. 114-117. Fouquet much admires the new tactical suggestions. Seems to think, however, that the certainly practicable one is, in particular, the last, that of improving our artillery to some equality with theirs, for which, as may appear, the king has already been taking thought, in more ways than one. Finance is naturally a heavy part of Friedrich's problem, the part which looks especially impossible. From our point of vision, in Friedrich's country, the war budget does not differ from the peace one. Neither is any borrowing possible. That sublime art of rolling over on you know not whom the expenditure, needful or needless, of your heavy-laden self, had not yet, though England is busy at it, been invented among nations. Once, or perhaps twice, from the stand of some willing province, Friedrich negotiated some small loan, which was punctually repaid when peace came, and was always gratefully remembered. But these are as nothing, in face of such expenses, and the thought how he did contrive on the finance side, is, and was not a little wonderful. An ingenious predecessor, whom I sometimes quote, has expressed himself in these words. Such modicum of subsidy, he is speaking of the English subsidy in 1758. How useful will it prove in a country bred everywhere to Spartan thrift, accustomed to regard waste as sin, and which will lay out no penny except to purpose. I guess the Prussian exchequer is, by this time, much on the ebb, idle precious metals tending everywhere towards the melting pot. At what precise date the Friedrich Wilhelm balustrades,